We are so excited. We are sitting here with a mental health expert, Nathalie Botezatu. She is not only a foster of ours, but has become a sister and has been in the trenches with us through a lot. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you so much for having me. I admire you both so much, and it's just such an honor to be a part of what you're doing. It's such an honor to be a foster. It has totally changed my life forever, and I'm just so happy to be here.
I can't wait to talk about that, because I know that you are very vocal about the way that fostering has changed your life, and you have had some apprehensions about getting involved and the positive changes it's made in your life since being involved. So I'm really excited to get to that.
I'm so excited too. It's really been so wonderful.
Good. Okay, so Nathalie, from an outsider's perspective, like maybe someone who has just followed rescues on Instagram and loves dogs, what did you see that you were like, oh, I know that this could be something that's hard and maybe I'm not comfortable with it, but I want to help?
So we were thinking about rescuing a second dog. We have a little dog named Charlie, little dog with big dog energy, and we're obsessed with him. And we were maybe thinking about getting a second dog, but we had just moved in together and we weren't sure if we wanted to rescue. We weren't sure if we were fully ready for that. So I had been following you guys on Instagram for quite some time, and you posted a lot about fostering, and there were some of your fosters, specifically senior babies, that I was like, oh, babe, look, would you want to foster this baby? I know like keeping forever is a big commitment, but
Totally.
fostering just for a short period of time, just let's try it out. And he has a soft spot for the seniors as well. And so he said, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and let's try it.
He said, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Keep him.
She
I
has
know, right?
such a good man. Such a good man. Goals.
I'm
we love
100%
him.
keeping
We
him
love him.
for sure.
Okay, good.
And he's
Aw.
been so loving and kind with all these fosters. And so it was a little kind of scary. Oh my gosh, it feels like a big commitment.
Mhm.
But then as soon as we started, it felt very just clear that you can have a foster for a few weeks. If you're traveling, we'll find someone else to have the foster for a few days. We did that a few times.
Mhm.
And someone else fostered for the few days we were gone. And then
Mhm.
we're like, give him back to us as soon as we get back. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Totally.
Until they get adopted. And so it became a lot easier than I originally thought. Like, oh, can it really work around our life schedule? And the
Uh-huh.
answer is 1000% yes.
What about the effect that it's had on your dog? Has he loved having these friends around, or is he like, it's time for you to go? This is my mom.
So Charlie has BDE, big dog energy, but he's a 20-pound wiener dog.
Okay.
And we were actually, that's probably the one reason we didn't do fostering sooner, is because he loves being an only child.
Mhm.
And we were worried that he was going to hate these fosters and be really mean to them
Yeah.
and say, you're not welcome here.
Yeah.
But he's 9, so he's getting a little older. We said, you know what? It'll probably be good for it. Let's just try. That was our one thing. Let's try with one dog. And surprisingly, I think Charlie could sense that these doggies have been through it. And he was very clear with boundaries of like, that's my favorite toy. You can't touch it.
Right.
I sleep in that spot with mom and dad. That's my bed. He was very clear on that. And I think all of our fosters, just coming from their traumatized past, they're like, I'm totally okay with that. I'm just happy to be here. And so he set his boundaries, but I think he could sense that, you know what, these dogs have it a little harder than me. Let me be kind of nice. And they were
Totally.
more timid and withdrawn just
Yeah.
because of their trauma. And that
Yeah.
worked really well with our very boisterous, big energy Charlie. And he has done so well. We've had 7 fosters with you guys in the
Yeah.
past year, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And he has done so well with every single one of them. Of course, some of them, there's never been a fight. But there's been like
Setting
barking
boundaries.
and boundaries
Right. Yeah.
for sure. And I think that's normal when you bring in
1,000%.
a new dog. And so that's not something that people should be scared about.
Totally.
That's something that people should see as, oh, that's how they're learning to get along. That's how they're learning how to listen to boundaries. I think with some of our
Yes.
younger fosters,
Yes.
they needed to learn those things. And Charlie was the
Yeah.
perfect doggy
Yeah.
to
So
teach them.
Charlie is teaching these dogs how to be a family member.
Mhm.
It's not just like, this is my house and you're only welcome to parts of it. It's like, this is my house and you're going to learn what it's like to live in a house with other people
Yep.
and maybe dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
For sure.
he's been a really good foster brother.
He's been so good. And sometimes we were a little nervous about it, but he has been the foster brother expert. We're so proud of him. And we thought he would be the dog that does not do well with fostering, and he's actually been perfect. But I think we held space for that.
Totally.
We allowed him to kind of still set his boundaries, and we were willing to work with him in making it work, where I think so many people are scared to stress their dogs out, but it's actually been so great for Charlie. I'm so glad we've done it.
That's so awesome.
He's actually, if you think about it, especially with the dogs that you've taken on, the perfect temperament, because we've given you dogs that have been under socialized, that don't know their own boundaries, that are scared, timid, that would rather go sit in the corner. And here's a guy who is like, okay, dude, like with Benji.
Mm-hmm.
And Benji was like, this guy who had a big personality, just like Charlie, but in a different way. And Charlie was like, listen, no, my house, my rules. And you're going to listen to me. And that did wonders for us being, well, and of course, you guys being so good with him, but getting him adopted. And then you had someone like Emmy, who was a little Chihuahua, also from hoarding.
Situation. Mm-hmm.
Yep, who was scared of her own shadow.
Yeah.
And she came to live with you. And I just remember the first day, I was like, okay, if you guys go on a walk, please keep her on lockdown. She's not good on a leash. She hasn't even been out of a house in we don't know how long. And sure enough, Charlie showed her the way.
Yeah, his confidence plays a really crucial role in letting these dogs come into who they are. It's like what we were talking about with the trainers. You want to set boundaries for these dogs that are coming into your house. You don't want them to walk in and rule the roost. And Charlie makes sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Even if your human instinct is like, I want to give this dog everything because they've had a rough past, Charlie is like, okay, but 1 second.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually my house.
Yeah.
It really works out so perfectly.
It's so perfect. I'm very proud of him.
You as a mental health expert, my question is, bringing in these dogs with these different personalities and temperaments and traumas and PTSDs and issues, what has that taught you about A, yourself, and B, human?
It has been more challenging emotionally than I thought it would be. But because it's been more challenging emotionally, it has made it even more worth it for me. And because I thought it would just be something that we do to help, it is now something that we do because it's actively changing our lives and actively saving lives. And so emotionally, it's been a lot because it's been lots of ups and downs of you see these beautiful, perfect dogs and you're like, why does nobody want them? Why are they in this situation? And it just tears your heart wide open. And so I've had to really practice managing my emotions more. I teach it with my clients all the time. We talk about managing your emotions all the time. But when you start fostering, and you guys know this, in the world of rescue, your emotions are on a completely different spectrum. And you feel things more deeply. You feel the highs really high. And then you also feel the lows, the sadness of hearing just traumas and things that happen. You feel that really low. So I really had to kind of practice when I'm preaching more than ever with making sure that when I'm feeling these emotions, I'm allowing myself to feel them. I think people are very scared to feel the emotions because they're scared that if they feel them, they'll be stuck there. But feelings are meant to be felt. They're meant to move through us. They're meant to inspire something within us, but they're not meant to stay. And oftentimes when we just feel them, like you have the good cry, you have the celebration, you feel the feeling, chances are it'll eventually pass because that's what feelings are meant to do.
You work through it.
And I think that people maybe shy away from rescue work or fostering because they're scared of feeling. But the feelings are going to pass if you allow them to pass. And those feelings are actually going to allow you to do even more wonderful things, to feel even deeper, to maybe want to help in even more ways and be creative with different ways that you can help and get excited about that. So I think just really the emotional component and not shying away from the tough stuff, which there's a lot of it, but feeling it And then using that as fuel has been so important for me to make sure that I'm processing my emotions on a regular basis and not being scared of them.
Totally. I think that's something that you and I have to deal with on a regular basis, because we are often confronted with these emotions that if you sit and think about them too much and you shy away from them because you don't want them to happen, it would really keep us from being as effective as we can be. But I would be lying if I said that I don't think about those things. Like, I still take a deep breath before we walk through a shelter. I still know what we're getting into when we rescue a senior dog who maybe doesn't have a lot of time left. So I can appreciate the working through the emotions, because I think that it hasn't stopped us yet. We can't let it stop us, but it does play a super role in the way that we move forward.
Treasure.
This is our guard dog.
She's guarding. We're talking about serious stuff here, honey. I think that this is a really great talking point, because you and I work together a lot. You are my guru every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Yeah. Nobody else can have that spot. And I've come to you, both Lindsay and I, like, we have a conversation when one of our rescue dogs, not personal dogs, but if a rescue dog passes, we're still kind of pleasantly surprised that we have emotions still. Like, there's still tears, because I know that sounds so weird, but some days at this point, doing this for so long, there's no way around it. You become hardened. And, whether we're present for the dog passing or not, like, it's still, that hits like it would had we not been involved in the rescue world. And it's almost afterwards a relief that it did hit that hard, and that we did have that release and process that emotion.
Totally. You're like, cool, I'm still a human being. I'm still living. I still have emotions and all of that stuff. That's true.
Yeah.
That can be scary, to get to a point where you're scared that you won't feel anything because of everything that you have felt.
Right.
But at our core, we are emotional beings. And I think you guys are probably a good example of people. You don't get necessarily numb to it, but in kind of a crappy way, you get used to it. But I think you both have gotten used to managing your emotions. And so I hope you give yourselves credit on a regular basis for being able to process. Because I think if you weren't healthily processing your emotions and your feelings and not connected in that way, you probably still wouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we've certainly woken up on mornings and been like, I think this is it for me. Like, I
think we're done here.
We've said, I think that we're done here, but we do process the emotions, and it's really helpful to have a partner, and we can process it together, and you and your partner can do the same, which is really nice. But I find it so interesting that this particular career path that we've all chosen, and what you've chosen to become involved with, attracts an empathetic person. And you can't really do this work without caring about things, but then the more you do the work, the less you care about things. And it's a really weird dichotomy, like a thing that's happening in my brain, being like, care but don't care too much.
Yeah. And I remember when I was new to the game, having dinner one night, and I was like, I don't know how you do this. We had just lost a dog, or not lost, but the dog had died. And she just looked at me, and it was someone else sitting there too. And they're like, you learn to compartmentalize, like, just like that. And I was like, okay, I don't know that that's ever going to happen for me. Right. Now I get it, but still, I'm always, like I said, glad that I can still move through the emotions. And as far as you and I go, I feel blessed that you and I seem to have each other's backs. Like, it's weird. Like, the same thing happens to the both of us. One of us will go down the rabbit hole of mental health and emotions. Yeah. And the other one will be fine for some weird reason.
But we can't both crash at the same time. No. What would happen?
And we pick each other up. We really do.
Yeah. No, you're right. You make a lot of sense to me. You make a lot of sense to me too.
You guys are a great team.
Oh, thank you.
Both just jive and go with each other's ups and downs and support each other in such a wonderful way. And having community is so important when it comes to mental health. Having someone that is supporting you in some way. They don't have to be in it with you, but just someone who's listening, someone who is there to hold space for you is so important. And you guys do great things with building community with each other and with the rescue world, and that really helps immensely to help you keep going.
And I also, you know, in that same vein, when I'm feeling like, okay, my work wife, who I love more than most things in life, you know, you don't always want to put your shit on someone else, especially those close to you. And she and I share a very, you know, strong, intense marriage. So for me to have you in my back pocket, just like for that processing, and
you get the shit.
You get the shit.
She's like, I'll dump the shit on her.
You hold space. You hear me. I can have my tantrums. I can have my cries. I can have my emotions. And then you always have some kind of tool, not to fix it, but just to help me process. And that way I can take a breath. I can do my homework and front face into the world as a semi-whole human.
Yeah.
As whole as you can be.
I'm honored to help you work through your shit. I'm so honored.
Can you tell us about these tools? I don't get all of these tools.
Sure. So one, actually kind of going back to the feelings thing, one of the tools that I like to use all the time, and actually my coach gave this to me like over 6 years ago, is getting in the habit of identifying what you're feeling and then giving yourself what you need. So for example, if there's a moment of intense emotion, whether you're grieving or whether you're upset about something, which happens a lot when you're in the world of rescue, first question is ask yourself, what do I feel right now? And actually writing it down somewhere and identifying it. I use this. Have I ever sent you an emotion wheel? Did I send one? Maybe.
I think so. Yeah, at the beginning.
It was an emotion chart, and it basically has all these emotions. So you guys, anyone who's listening can just Google emotion wheel, emotion chart.
We'll slip it in here.
Yeah.
Sure. And when you see there's so many emotions to feel, because we really think I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm angry. But when we start realizing that, oh, wait, I'm feeling this a little bit more. I'm feeling more apathetic, or I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling more hurt than anything. When we put words to the feelings that we're feeling, it gives them a little bit more, they don't feel as strong or as like scary in our minds. And then once we identify the emotion, that also helps us move through it, be like, oh, okay, let me just identify it, instead of a lot of the times emotions, we just feel everything. You're like, I don't even know what I feel. I'm just so overwhelmed. I just don't feel good. But when we identify it and disempowers it, it helps us to also identify it. And then the second question, after identifying what am I feeling, the second question is, what do I need right now? And really starting to connect with the part of you that's feeling these feelings and just giving yourself what you need in this moment. And sometimes the answer might be, I don't know, which is totally okay. And then maybe in a few minutes asking yourself again, what do I need? And oftentimes it's things like, I need a hug, or I need just some alone time away from my phone. I need to just go on a walk with Charlie. I need to call my brother and just vent. I need to eat a snack, because the reason I'm so emotional is because I'm on my monthly cycle special time and my blood sugar is really low, so I need a snack. I need to drink some water.
Hungry.
It might really be that. But giving ourselves a regular opportunity to check in and be like, what am I feeling and what do I need? We cultivate a relationship with ourselves. And when you have a relationship with yourself, when you're going through the tough stuff that often comes with rescue, it's easier to get through it. It's easier to stay in it. And that's a tool that you have. Like, I just need a couple seconds to connect with myself, to ground myself in me, process some emotions, and I can move forward. So that's my favorite.
And that makes so much sense too, because in a world like this where things are happening very quickly, and yes, like we'll get past one thing with the dog, but then there will be another crisis and whatever. It's hard to take the time to identify anything. Like, you're just running through this world. So many things are happening. And I think by the end of the day, we can be really depleted and defeated and just be like, like everything is so hard. But really, had we identified the things throughout the day, it could be A, more manageable, because we know exactly what we're dealing with when we're not as overwhelmed. And B, like you said, it takes a lot of the power away from it. So maybe we need like a couple of minutes after each shelter thing. Maybe it's that time when we're eating like our French fries and we're like, we're having our Diet Coke because we can't make it any longer, to like go over what we've just experienced.
Right. And we don't do that, and we probably should.
We don't do that. No.
We need to honor our feelings and ourselves and be able to process that out instead of like rushing to the vet and moving on to the next phase of the day.
Totally. And always on the phone, like, who is going to foster? Oh, we have an adopter for this dog. And it is hard. There's a lot of plates to keep spinning in the air, but I think that each plate is less heavy if you identify it.
Absolutely.
We're in our identifying era.
Yeah. I love that for us.
Yeah, so is there a significant difference between human trauma and animal trauma? Do you think about these same tools when an animal enters your house? Like whatever they've experienced in the past, especially because they can't talk to us, how do you manage like having space for that trauma, but helping them move through it?
Sure. Oh, I totally think it's so similar, animal trauma and human trauma. The first two girls we had, the first one was Azalea, then it was Emmy, do not like men. And we would just be walking on a walk, and if a man is walking by himself towards us or anywhere near us, not happy about it. And I was like, you know what? I feel the same at night.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm a little worried and a little concerned too. Yeah. And so that was something that I was like, I can totally relate. I know maybe sometimes it feels, oh, silly. Why does this dog feel this way? And some of our dogs even had like women trauma. Benji loved Nick. Benji absolutely loved Nick. So I don't think he necessarily had like women trauma, but he definitely felt tugged more towards Nick. I mean, Nick's a tall, very safe presence. And so I feel that too. So it's totally relatable.
Yeah.
And they have their brains have and associate meaning with things that happen in the same way that our brains do.
Right.
Which is so crazy. So the way that I have like just created a safe space for them is for really Azalea and Emmy, who had the man trauma. It was kind of more on Nick. I didn't really have to do anything. But he was just never pushing their boundaries. He wouldn't go and pet them unless they came to him. We would go on pack walks with me and him, just like creating and showing them an example of what's possible without pushing them to a point where they're uncomfortable. Never forcing them to go on a walk alone with him unless they wanted to. Never forcing them to be next to him unless they wanted to. Just giving them and holding space for them. Say, hey, here's an example of something that's safe that you're not used to. Whenever you're ready, you can start being open to that. But not until you're ready. But here's a constant example. And that's how humans heal their trauma too.
Totally.
Is you give them a safe space to experience something more loving and something different, but you don't push them in the direction. You don't force them. You just provide a consistent example of a more loving experience
for when they're ready.
And with time, they'll just naturally step into it because their heart wants to heal. Their heart wants more love. Their heart wants a safe space. And so it's the exact same way. And it's just so beautiful to see with these animals. I think animals heal quicker than humans. Just some of the dogs we've had, the first day they come in, I was like, oh boy, Sweet Pea is just not having it. She's just going to stay in her bed all day. But then within the 3 days, Azalea popped onto Nick's lap and we were both like, oh. And so I think humans heal at a slower rate just because I think we have more resistance. We have more judgment.
Pesky brains of ours.
Right. Yeah. But with animals, they just can so clearly see and sense, oh, this is love. This is safe.
And
their hearts heal within. We have different dogs from day one, and like 7 days in, it's a different dog.
Yes, of course.
And it's so rewarding to be like, we did that. We gave them a safe space, and now they're so happy. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah, that's so cool.
When you are dealing with humans who are working through PTSD, is there some kind of a worksheet or some kind of a program that you bring out for them to follow?
Sure. With PTSD work, it can be really deep. So I do recommend that if you're ready to dive into it, that you do it with someone who's a really safe space. Whether it's a coach or a counselor or a therapist, I do strongly recommend that because it can bring up a lot of really intense things that if you don't have the tools to move through it on your own, it can just feel like a lot. So I do recommend asking for help if you're feeling ready to dive into that work. So that's step number 1. But step number 2, just from a place of awareness and kind of the way that I handle trauma and healing my own trauma in my life, is recognizing that whenever I'm having a trauma response, like anxiety or fear or something that's really intense, I check in with myself and I say, what does this part of me need right now? What does this part of me that's freaking out, that's so sad, that is just so having this response, what does this part of me need right now? And oftentimes it's very simple. It's this part of me needs some love. This part of me needs to be reminded that I'm safe. Like, that's such a big one. This part of me needs to be reminded that I'm enough, I'm worthy, and just taking a second. And for me, it's either journaling and as if I'm talking to the part of me that's having the trauma response, or it's just like closing my eyes and having like a mental moment where I'm kind of talking to myself and just giving that part of me what it needs in that moment. So that's something that anyone can do. You don't even need to know what your trauma is or what your PTSD is and dive into that. That's something anyone, whenever you're feeling just disconnected from yourself, lots of emotions and having kind of a trauma response, just checking in and saying, taking a deep breath, saying, what does this part of me need right now? And oftentimes it's a safe space, it's love, and reminding yourself and giving yourself and filling your own cup in a way. So that's probably the biggest thing I would recommend.
Okay, so maybe now's a good moment for us to talk about when you and I go to the shelter, and even all these years later, I do feel a sense of PTSD whenever I leave. But I also feel like in hearing you talk and, you know, give all these help and solutions, I never really feel like that solves my PTSD. Is that something in life that, given my path of choice, that I'm just going to have to deal with? Or at one point, do I decide to honor myself and move on to greener pastures?
To working at Urban Outfitters. And like surround ourselves with adorable items.
Right. And like designing the windows.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I think that when you put yourself in an environment that is consistently triggering, it will bring up things on a regular basis. I think that's to be expected. And I don't think we ever fully heal with certain things. Maybe that's not even the goal, to 100% heal from something. I think the goal with just mental health is getting better at utilizing tools to just keep going. Because I don't think my anxiety is ever going to go away. I would love for it to go away. I would love for it to be non-existent.
Right.
And there have been seasons of several months where it was non-existent, but then of course something happens and triggers it, and it comes up, and it's not like, oh my gosh, I failed in my trauma work. It's like, oh no, this is an opportunity for me to practice my tools. This is an opportunity for me to just give myself what I need. And it's a moment where there's a part of me that's triggered. That part of me needs some extra love. I've gotten really good at loving on that part of me. So let me go ahead and implement those tools. And I think with this type of work, we don't really have the expectation that it goes away. We just have the expectation that we get better and better at managing it. Because if you choose to, you're going to repeatedly put yourself in triggering environments.
Right.
And even though it would be so great for you to no longer be triggered by it, you're also human. And you also deeply feel, both of you deeply feel so much. And just like you said, you're happy when you feel something. So of course you're triggered.
Right.
And so you will you can get better and better at utilizing these tools. You can get better and better at being able to process, and you can be empowered in that. And I bet you anything that there will be different points on your journeys continuously where there's going to be someone else that's dealing with what you did.
Right.
And hearing that, hey, you can get better at managing this because you've practiced it, is exactly what someone needs to know. It's not having this perfectionist standard of, I haven't healed my trauma, so I suck and I should be doing better. That's not the expectation. The expectation is that just get better and better at it. But if you do genuinely get to a point where you're like, I need a break from this, I want to go work at Urban Outfitters, you get to honor that too. I imagine there's something for your heart in that too. And maybe while you're working at Urban Outfitters, you connect with your soul and really heal it on a super deep level because you're no longer traumatized. But then maybe you wake up one morning 6 months later and you're like, all right, I'm ready to dive back in. I feel like I have some really good tools. And you probably somehow find yourself reconnected to the thing. So you're allowed to make the choices and take the
Totally.
breaks. And also just realize that you get to get better and better at shifting and healing the parts of you that are consistently triggered.
I love that. And I love that you keep saying managing those things, because if you ever walked out of a shelter and felt nothing, I would be very concerned for your well-being. I think that that's not the goal here. The goal is to manage the feelings in a way that we can continue to be effective, because the shelter is a traumatic place for dogs, for people, for visitors, whatever. To expect that you would continuously expose yourself to that trigger and not feel anything would be like we have turned to stone. And I do also want to mention that I think there are probably people at Urban Outfitters that are like, you don't want to work here either. So like, I think that the grass is always greener.
That's right.
But there is something about like a colorful sweater that feels like it could heal me.
Yeah. Creative retail.
Creative retail.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I could find myself back in there at any time. I would love that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Do you want to walk out of a shelter and not feel anything?
No, but I want to be able to be more effective. And I feel like sometimes my emotions hold me back from that, because I don't know, it's such overwhelming like shit coming at us in there. And I'm not thinking straight. And, you know, we kind of have the insider scoop on who's on their last day, who's on their last 72 hours. So like my mind then takes over, and it's a big, okay, who we can help, who do we have fosters for? And also beyond that, the thing that I don't speak about is like, what the fuck? These dogs are gonna die and I can't do a thing about it. And it's this feeling inside of me that I'm not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you and I have discussed before, you know, and that sense of never being able to do enough in life or, you know, with whomever and whatever they're doing. And that's just something that I definitely carry with me on a daily basis. I'm not very good at giving myself grace to chill out for a minute, you know, because we have chosen a path where we don't have that luxury.
Right.
To soothe our souls, we start podcasts and have fun guests who teach us things. But the reality is we live in a city where it's just going to continue unless things change. And that's just going to be a part of my life.
Right.
And I have to learn how to deal with that.
Sure. Well, when you have those moments where it just never feels like you're doing enough, that's something I think every single human feels in whatever they're doing. So you're 100% not alone in that. I feel that too. And I'm constantly working on that. But I imagine that in that not enough, from that feeling, we do get to remind ourselves of there's literally only so much that I can do. So you are allowed to give yourself grace in that, but that definitely takes practice. But there has been I imagine there's been some things that have come from that. For example, this podcast, from that feeling of like, we need to do more. There's only so much I can take here. This beautiful podcast was born, and it's already touching so many people and really spreading the word in a whole new way. So from that intensity of those moments, this was created. You guys are also talking about spay and neuter clinics more, because you're like, we have to think of more ways to help. And so spay and neuter clinics and funding those and making sure that the word is spread about that has been born from that. So it can feel like, man, this not enoughness and this thing that I'm feeling just always feels so heavy. But you can also see how amazing things have been born from that. And it's caused you to be creative, think critically, and really direct things in a really powerful way. And we can't, like you guys said, you can't rescue your way out of this. And so it has caused you to be creative. So in a way, you can be grateful for it and see it as not a whole just bad thing.
That's pretty powerful.
I feel like that was a mic drop moment. We should wrap this right up.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So good things are born from having to sit in kind of the mud, you know, the lotus flower. Isn't that the story of the lotus?
Okay. Yeah.
Lotus flowers are born from like puddles of mud.
Sure. Sometimes there is more mud than necessary to grow the flower.
100%.
I think that you really gotta, that flower is like lovely, but then you like turn around, you're like, I don't see the flower. It's all mud. But I can see that there would be one, but that made me think of something what you were saying. And I wonder what your tools are to work in a world of social media where we are working our asses off on a regular basis and constantly feeling like we're not doing enough, and then constantly being confronted by people who think that we need to be doing more or have harsh words to say in response to us just doing the best that we can.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I've seen it too, and it's tough because it's one thing to be interacting with people and have crappy experiences, is another thing to be on your phone and having someone just like spew the stuff, and you're like, I'm just trying to help, get off my back, like chill out. So social media is a place where it can do really beautiful things, and you both are so allowed to set boundaries with that. You're so allowed to get on social media, do what needs to be done to spread the word, make the posts, network with the people, and you can go ahead and step away from that. I've had friends who manage different social media, and sometimes they literally hire other people to help them with the icky comments, or they set different keywords on their posts to limit that. Like if you can't hire someone to help you with your social media, just setting boundaries with social media is so incredibly important. I know it's really cliche to say, but it is so incredibly important, especially in what you guys are doing. And I also want you guys to notice that there are magical things happening all the time with your social media. There are things that, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like a post reaches a lot of people, even though you don't get the engagement you want or you don't have the applications you want, magical things are still happening all the time. So like, for example, do you remember Crenshaw? He had the cone, the big like hole in his face, which healed perfectly without surgery.
Wild.
Insane.
Crazy.
They found him. They had applied to, I think, over 7 dogs with other rescues and did not get accepted. They really wanted to adopt.
The adopters.
The adopters. And so they were just scrolling through the Explore page. They didn't even follow you guys. They were just scrolling through the Explore page, and they saw Crenshaw's face, and they're like, that is our dog.
Oh.
And it's funny because when they applied, someone else had applied before, and they, like literally that day they came to our home, and she was like, he's perfect, but this isn't my dog. And then literally like 3 days later, these people, and I sent you guys the picture, the 3 of them on our couch. I'm like, you guys are soulmates.
Dog.
This is perfect. I'm getting chills as I'm saying it. So miracles are always happening. We just have to be open to seeing them, to believing in them, and just trusting in them. It's so easy to get discouraged with social media, the mean people, the lack of views, the lack of engagement, whatever that might be. But even amongst that, the posts are getting to where they need to. Even amongst that, the people who need to see the things are more times than not seeing it, and things are magically happening. So I do it also even with my content too. I'm like, I still believe I'm putting this out there and it's somehow finding its way to the people. And we've even talked, Ellen, about different adoptions that have happened, and they're like came out of nowhere. And so it's always happening. And that's what I'm always reminding myself of, seeing social media as, instead of this thing that I'm always frustrated by, setting boundaries with it, and also just being open to how can things miracles can happen. How can just content land in the perfect person's phone and get a dog adopted in ways that I can't even expect. So I'm always reminding myself of that. And then also I try not to spend so much time on social media because it can be a lot.
Yeah.
It can be a lot.
But just to say, your social media, we will put your Instagram and whatever. Are you on Facebook or
it's
TikTok?
Just my name. If they just search my name, should be able to find me.
We will put it on
you
here.
You say that like it's easy, but your name's not the easiest to spell or say.
Well, like, if it's on the notes, people just copy and paste.
We'll do that. But just so you guys know, if you do choose to follow Nathalie, it is a daily deep dive into free mental health stuff. And it's refreshing, and your delivery. And I just love watching you, which is actually how, we're already texting each other about all the foster dogs. But I was like, hey, Nathalie, can we do this? And that's how that happened.
I love that. I love
too.
how that happened. I'm so grateful to be a part of what you guys are doing. I'm so grateful to support you and now your community with different mental health tools, because I think it's underrated, or people say I don't have time for myself. I need to help the dogs, which I've totally felt like that since fostering. But I'm like, no, there's only so much I can help the dogs with me just being completely drained. And so making sure
100%.
that my cup is full. That's not, I know it feels selfish often, like I should be doing this for the dogs, I should be doing that to help. But when you really support yourself internally, then you can show up so much better. So I'm so honored that I get to help you guys in doing more. And also, please get us another foster. We're ready.
Yeah, you got it. Careful what you, I know, really, like careful what you wish for. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you and your family manage a dog moving on to their forever home from your house.
Sure. Well, first, when we get the text from you, we're like, oh my gosh. And it always feels so unexpected. It's always like, oh, you want what? Like this week? And it's just always feels so unexpected because they do become part of our family so quickly. So the initial is excitement. And then leading up to when they come to pick up the dog, that's when I start getting a little sad of just really wanting to cherish my time with them, because we don't know if they're going to take the dog or if it's maybe not going to be a good fit, and they won't. So I let myself process and feel all the feelings. And usually I've cried with every dog so far. And I talk about them to Nick like every week. We just always exchange stories. I will love these dogs forever. And so I have the feelings. And then when someone comes to meet the dog, we always meet outside. We never have them come into our space. We always say, and sometimes if they're bringing another dog with them, we're always meeting on neutral territory. If you think of like a first date, you're not going to invite the person to your home. You're going to meet somewhere out like a neutral territory with other people. So we always like to make sure that our fosters meet on like neutral territory outside, that they're not strangers coming into this safe space of theirs. We're doing the outside meetup first. And so then I like to also make sure that I communicate to the potential adopters some of the boundaries, and really communicate. And what I'd love for everyone to kind of understand with this is that dogs have boundaries the same ways we do. And if someone says, I don't like hugs, chances are you're not going to go in for a hug. You're going to be like, okay, cool. Well, what about a handshake? I'm okay. How about a fist bump? Yeah, you know what? I'm okay with that. And dogs are the same. And that some dogs don't like to be picked up. And even if I'm their favorite person, I'm not going to pick up a dog if they don't want to be picked up. If a dog doesn't like to or can't eat next to another dog, we've had this, we're always going to make sure to separate them. Even if Charlie, our dog, and the foster have known each other for months and months, we're still having that routine and maintaining those boundaries. So I like to really communicate to potential adopters, hey, these boundaries are really important to this dog, and they're going to need a little bit of time and patience and grace to adjust. But once they adjust, they will open their heart and give you everything. And so that has been the biggest thing that I'm like, wow, I should really set boundaries like these dogs do more in my life.
Yeah, it's relatable.
Yeah.
I love their boldness in setting boundaries. And I love that I'm a safe space for them to communicate those boundaries. And so I've even taken this into the real world with me. I'm like, you know what? I need to set boundaries like Benji did.
Yeah.
I'm going to just like harness my inner Benji right now.
Yes.
And that has been such a beautiful example and learning opportunity for me, for sure.
That's so interesting that you say that, because Benji particularly, what he is a lovely, beautiful, precious, sweet little dog who just does not like to be picked up. And I can relate to that because like once I trust a person, sure, like I'm down for hugs, like you said, or I mean, whatever it is. I can feel sometimes that I am very clear about my boundaries. I'll say it really clearly. And someone will be like, but not with me, right? Like not like I'm not, I don't have any bad intentions. Like you won't feel that way with me. And with Benji, like you said, even though you were his favorite person, he expressed, I do not like to be picked up. And my favorite person can't pick me up either because that's just the boundary that I have.
Yeah.
I love that about Benji.
Love that about Benji.
But it scared a lot of people. It makes me think like a lot of people welcome a dog into their home for them rather than for the dog and giving the dog what they need to thrive instead of bringing this dog into their home to fill some sort of hole within their lives, which it could be mutually beneficial, but particularly at the beginning and a dog with boundaries, I can see that setting up a space for them to feel safe and loved is of the utmost importance.
Yes, for sure. It's so important. And Benji ended up with a family who was willing to really give him those boundaries. Yeah. And he ended up, the family has a big husky girl and she's like 15. And when she met Benji, she turned into a puppy. Aww. And it was very funny because Benji was very scared of her right from the beginning because she was this big dog. And she was just like, I'm just going to sit here. Like, I'm totally safe. And he, like, luckily she had this very floofy fur. He went to, like, snap at her a few times. And she was just, like, trying to play with him. And he asserted his boundaries. And even his older sister was holding space for him. And there were a few things that they texted throughout that first week together. And they just really gave him space to assert his boundaries, feel safe. And then, like, within the week, I get a picture of him, like, in bed with all of them. And now his older sister is his best friend. They do walks together. They share food, which was never a thing with Charlie and Benji. They gave him the space, and he is now absolutely thriving.
The human and the dog. It's natural for the dogs to learn each other's boundaries. They have their whole beginning communication that like a human is not even privy to. Yeah. It's so important that, I mean, we can really learn things from the animal kingdom. Kind of my
sure. Oh, so much. So much.
Totally. Even, Benji snapping at people or snapping at a dog. Like that's just how he communicates. It doesn't mean that he's an aggressive, bad dog. It just means that that's his mode of delivering his boundaries and his likes and dislikes, and no means no. And
yeah.
I mean,
I also think people who pride themselves in being dog people don't like when a dog is not nice to them.
Good point. Say it louder for the people in the back.
And they take it personally, like, oh my gosh, but I'm a dog person.
Yes.
And truth, that doesn't matter. If you're a people person, there's still gonna be people that don't.
Like, are you a Benji person?
Yeah,
do you understand Benji?
Yes, exactly.
100%.
They take it personally, and really, it isn't about them personally. It's just about the dog and their boundaries and what they desire. And that dog 100% deserves the world. Deserves the love, the space, the safety, the boundaries.
Yeah. And
when people realize that it really is just about the dog and not about them, it's so much easier to just go with the flow of the dog, and then more times than not the dog will then do whatever you want. Like Benji, there were times where he's like, I really don't want to be picked up, but I would need to pick him up for certain things, and he would let me
because he trusts you.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense even for the saying goodbye to a dog, because you at that moment have to acknowledge that might not be what you want. Like you love having this dog around, but what's best for the dog and for the dog to thrive is to let them move on to their next adventure. Can you share how that's been in your family, with your partner, with Charlie, like how everyone handles it?
Sure. Well, Nick has a Italian family, and everyone meets the Fosters, and so everyone loves them. So every time Nick, at his office,
excuse us.
He brings the Fosters with him also, and they're the security. at the office. So everyone knows the dog. So it's not just me saying goodbye to these dogs. It's the whole family when they say goodbye.
Aww.
So usually we do like a final meet up with the family so that they can spend time with the dog and like say goodbye and love on the dog a little bit. And it's emotional, but every time it's a celebration. Every time it's like, oh my gosh, this dog is going to potentially really wonderful home. How great. Because as much as we love them, we can't give them the 100% best home that they need just with our lifestyle, which is why we're fostering, because we want to give, but we can't commit to adopting just yet for another dog. So we have very happy that this dog is going to go somewhere where they're going to be obsessed over, like we obsess over Charlie, and loved maybe on an even deeper level. But it's hard. It's so emotional. I cry every single time. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to cry, but then literally as I'm handing the dog off, I just start crying. And I think the adopters are like, oh my gosh, are you okay? I'm like, I'm totally fine. This is so great. I just love this perfect little dog and have so much fun just loving on them because they're perfect.
And it's also like a proud moment. You're like ushering them to the next wonderful part of their life.
Exactly. And so going back to the emotional processing, I 100% have to do how am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? And to really make sure that I'm moving through those emotions, because it can be a lot. Because some people say, oh, the pain is too hard. Why would I want to foster if I have to say goodbye all the time? Well, because then when you say goodbye to one, then it's always another hello. It's always the next dog. And so that's always something that I like to focus on. And I always want to keep saying yes to dogs, because yes, it comes with a goodbye, but it also comes with so many more hellos and so many more surprises and dogs that I love more and more, which I didn't think I could love a dog like I love Benji. And then it was Cody, then it was Frankie, then it was Moose, then it was
Moose,
Crenshaw. Oh my gosh, every single one has just
keep
been
loving them.
I can't believe I could love each of them. They all have their own little nicknames. Like the first day Crenshaw came to us, he was a very stinky boy. So we got a nice bath, but we called him Stinky like that first day. And so we changed it to Stinkaloo. And so
I can see.
It was like so cute. And we have these names for them and we love them. I think we even like gave the dog, and we accidentally, talking to adopters, like called that dog the other name.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
I was like, oh wait, sorry, excuse me. So we do, like, I love every single one of them. Like, they're truly my own children, and I would welcome every single one of them back into our home, no questions asked. That's what Nick always, he has a moment with every dog before they leave, and he said, now you're always welcome here.
Aww.
If you ever need to come back, you just call us up.
I love Nick.
And we'll bring you right back home. And it's just a very precious moment, and I love that too about him. I'm like,
he's a good man.
He's a good man. Such a good man.
We talked a little about us and our grieving and the fact that we do it kind of on a more regular basis. I think a really great question for you to touch upon would be somebody who isn't in the rescue world, but, has adopted a dog and has loved this dog up for life and has to say a final goodbye. What is, a healthy way in which to grieve and to process? And I guess this could also go across the board for, losing your animals, but also, the humans in your life.
Sure. So grief looks different for absolutely everyone. And as much as I'd love to say that there's this grief solving equation, it really does look different for everyone, because everyone has a different connection to the person or the animal that they're losing. And so the biggest thing I would say is just allow yourself to feel the feelings. I know that a lot of people just want to shut it off and say, I've cried enough, let me just stop crying. But the crying is part of the grieving process. And of course, maybe sometimes you need to shut it off to go to work, but then allowing yourself to just feel all of that. Again, grief is felt in your body, so it needs to also move through your body. And so that's one big thing. The second thing is really not being scared to talk about the person or the animal that you lost, and not just talking about how sad you are, but making sure that you're also reflecting on the joys. So Nick lost his dad middle of last year. And so I knew Dad for 2.5 years, and I'm just like so upset that I only got to know him for 2.5 years, but it still felt like a lifetime. And so we've been, and Dad was also very close to Benji, loved Benji, even when he was in the hospital, like so sick. I could barely talk, would always ask about Charlie and Benji, which was so like perfect and precious. And so we would talk about that and say like, oh my gosh, do you remember when Dad was so sick but still loved the dogs, loved the animals, asked when we're getting our next foster, and talking about the happy stuff and talking also about the stuff that you're mad about and holding space for the person who's feeling the thing.
Totally.
And if someone's like, I'm just so upset about this, and holding a safe space looks like being like, yeah, that's really messed up. You should be upset. I'm very upset too. And sometimes we don't have to do anything.
Yes.
We just have to be okay with what we're feeling.
Totally.
And so with grief, I think it's just allowing yourself to have your own grieving process, talking about what you're feeling, talking about the memories, still allowing yourself to maybe be with that person or that dog in a new way, but then also just holding space for each other and being like, I love you. I know you're grieving right now. If you need anything, I'm here. And just holding space for someone, not trying to move them along in their grieving process, just holding space and just saying, I'm here for you. That's truly enough.
Yeah.
With grieving.
I think that is something that we can all take away a little bit, is a lot of times we get lost in the sadness of losing the dog, or the dog losing whatever battle it was going through before they passed. But we can continue to do it, and we want to continue to do it because of all of the wonderful moments that we had with the dog or throughout the process prior to that last moment that could have been icky, could have been beautiful. Sometimes it's both. But yeah, to really take time to acknowledge the blessing that it was to have that dog in our lives has been really helpful in putting ourselves in a vulnerable position to do it again.
Yeah. And I like, Hannah had sent a story, I think, when Christine's Puka passed away. She sent a story about grief and pain and what it feels like in your heart. And the analogy was that it's your dog's tail wagging inside of your heart, which feels really uncomfortable and hurts. But that's just your dog telling you that he or she had a great life and they love you and they're still right there with you. I know.
That's so beautiful.
Isn't that so beautiful?
That's so beautiful. My best friend lost her soul kitty recently. And I also knew that cat. I'm really allergic to cats. But this cat I really knew, even within my crazy allergies. And it was just so heartbreaking. And one of the most beautiful things that we kind of discovered is that we want animals to be with us our whole lives.
Right.
But how beautiful that they were with us their whole lives.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, which is so special, right?
I love that.
And so if I had to choose, having Charlie for the rest of my life, I would love that. He's going to live forever. But I would rather him have the rest of his life with me.
Right.
If I could choose. And so that gave a
That
really
is a
beautiful spin to
great perspective.
I love that. Thanks, girls.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of your emotional support.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for coming today and sitting on the sofa with us and helping us figure our shit out. A lot of
It's
it
a work
anyway.
in progress.
It is for all of us, me included, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I know I've said it 7 billion times already, love being a part of what you're doing.
We love
Helping you in whatever way I can, whether it's through mental health stuff or fostering more dogs or anything else. It's such an honor, and I love you both.
We love you too. Thank you, Natalie.